She was very poor, and she was hungry. The food in her hand was the only meal she had left. Then she saw a crippled beggar by the roadside, calling out for help. She did not know who he was. She tried to ignore him, but she couldn't. Why did she give him her only meal? And how did a poor beggar later say, "I'm a billionaire"? Sit back, relax, and find out as we go deep into this story. The sun was low in the busy city of Delta. Cars moved fast. People crossed the streets. Hawkers called out to customers. In the middle of all this noise was Kimberly, a 25-year-old woman trying her best to survive. It was already evening, and Kimberly had just closed from work. She stood in front of a roadside food shop, holding the only money she had left tightly in her hand. Her stomach was empty. She had not eaten since morning. The next day was the day she would finally receive her first salary from the shop where she worked as a salesgirl. But right now, she needed food. Kimberly never knew her parents. She grew up in an orphanage. The owner of the orphanage once told Kimberly that she was found on a quiet night where someone had abandoned her. She told Kimberly that she had heard the soft cry of a baby outside the gate of her house one night when the rain was drizzling. When she opened the gate, she saw a tiny infant wrapped in a wet cloth. With no one in sight, she picked the baby up and took her inside. That baby was Kimberly. Life had never been easy for Kimberly. But she was smart. Very smart. In school, she was the best in her class. She even got a scholarship to the university. 4 years later, she graduated with a degree in business administration and moved out of the orphanage. Everyone thought she would get a good job. Everyone believed her life would change. But 2 years passed, and no job came. Companies wanted people who already had work experience. Kimberly had none, and in this part of the world, where the unemployment rate was over 40%, many people rushed into the few jobs available. This made companies very picky, so all her certificates stayed inside her bag, useless, at least for the time being. After trying and trying, she later took a job as a salesgirl in a small shop near her house. It was not what she dreamed of, but she needed something to survive for the meantime until she could get her dream job. Sometimes, she would still walk into different offices to submit her CV and job application letters. Now, as she stood in front of the roadside food shop, she bought a plate of rice and beans with the only money she had left. She carried the food carefully and started walking back home. But then, she saw something. By the side of the road, an elderly crippled man sat in a rusty wheelchair. His clothes were torn. His hands were shaking. His beard and hair looked rough and dirty. His eyes were full of pain. His name was Ezekiel. He lifted his eyes slowly when he saw a young lady walking with a food pack in her hand. "Please, my daughter," he called out, his voice weak. "I have not eaten since yesterday. Can you help me with something to eat?" Kimberly stopped. Her heart beat slowly. She stared at the food in her hand. Does this man not have children? Is there no one to care for him? She thought. Her stomach growled loudly. She was hungry, very hungry, but she looked at the old man again. He looked hungry and forgotten. Kimberly took a slow breath and turned to leave, holding her food tightly. But as she walked, she could not shake the picture of the old man's hungry face from her mind. She stopped on the road and stood still. How will he survive today? She thought. What if nobody helps him? He said he had not eaten since yesterday. A heavy feeling came over her. She remembered the story the orphanage owner told her, how she was found alone and abandoned as a baby. For a moment, she felt the same pain in the old man's eyes, like he too had been abandoned by the world. She turned around and walked back to him. "Papa," she said softly, "this food I am holding, it is the only food I have left. I bought it with the last money I had. I have not eaten since morning too." She paused, then added, "But I think you need it more than I do." The elderly man looked up in surprise and gently pushed the food in her hand back. "No, my daughter. Keep it. I can't allow you to sleep on an empty stomach tonight." But Kimberly shook her head firmly. "Please, Papa, take it. I want you to eat." She placed the food pack on his lap, insisting with gentle kindness until he finally accepted it. The elderly man's eyes suddenly became wet with tears. His lips shook. He looked at her like she was an angel. "My daughter. Thank you," he whispered. Kimberly nodded and turned to leave. She had no food now, but she felt peace inside her heart. As she walked away, she did not know that this simple act, this one moment of kindness, was about to change her life forever. Ezekiel sat quietly on his old wheelchair, watching Kimberly walk away. His eyes followed her until she disappeared into the busy street. He held the food pack with shaking hands. He kept asking himself one question: how can a young girl give her only food to a stranger like me? He had begged many people that day, but they all walked past him. Some looked away, some ignored him and kept moving. But Kimberly, she stopped. She listened. She spoke to him with respect, and she gave him everything she had left. Ezekiel whispered softly, "God, who is this girl? Who raised a heart like this?" He opened the food pack slowly. His eyes became wet again. No one had shown him such kindness before. The next morning came quietly. Kimberly woke up early, prepared, and stepped out of her small room. Her legs felt weak. Hunger sat deep in her stomach, slowing her steps. But she pushed herself forward. She had work to do. When she got to the shop, her boss was arranging goods on the shelf. "Hello, Kimberly," she said without looking at her. "Good morning, Ma," Kimberly replied. She went straight behind the counter and started her work. She tried to focus, but her stomach kept making small sounds. She held her waist gently and took a deep breath. She knew she had done the right thing by giving the elderly man food the day before, but it still hurt. That food was her only hope for that night. She had nothing left until her salary came. As customers came in and out, Kimberly's mind left the shop again. It went back to the elderly, disabled man on the roadside. His life must be hard, she thought. He sits under the hot sun every day, no family by his side, no one to help him. Who knows how long he's been going to bed on an empty stomach? Her heart became heavy. She wished she could do more. She rested her hand on the counter and whispered to herself, "I hope he is fine. I will check on him again this evening." For a moment, she looked out through the shop window. Cars moved, people hurried, and life continued. Evening came, and the sky slowly turned dark. Kimberly wiped her hands on her skirt and began to close the shop for the day. She was tired, but she was happy the long day was finally over. Her boss walked toward her with a small brown envelope. "Kimberly, this is your salary for the month," she said. Kimberly's eyes brightened a little. "Thank you, Ma," she replied softly. She held the envelope carefully, almost like it was something fragile. She went straight to the part of the road where food items were being sold. She bought some food items and turned toward the long road ahead, the same road where she had seen the elderly man yesterday. Then she began to walk toward the road. When she reached the spot, she stopped. Ezekiel was not there. The corner where he sat yesterday was empty. Kimberly looked left and right. She stepped closer to the roadside. She stood there for a while. Her heart felt heavy. Where could he be? She asked herself. Then another thought came. Does a man like that even have a house? She waited a little longer, hoping he would appear. Maybe he went somewhere to beg. Maybe he was coming back. But minutes passed. The road grew darker. The elderly man did not show up. Kimberly finally sighed softly and turned around to go home. When she reached her small one-room apartment, she unlocked the door and stepped inside. The room was quiet. Only her small mat lay on the floor. A small stove sat in the corner. Her whole life was in one small space. She dropped her bag gently, had a bath, prepared her food, and ate. As she lay down to sleep, her eyes stared at the ceiling as she whispered, "I hope he is safe." Her thoughts slowly faded as her eyes grew heavy. Within minutes, Kimberly drifted into sleep. The next morning, Kimberly woke up early. She got ready for work and stepped out, heading straight to the shop. When she arrived, she unlocked the door, swept the floor, cleaned the counter, and arranged the goods neatly on the shelves. About 2 hours later, her boss walked in. "Good morning, Ma," Kimberly said politely. Mrs. Benson gave a small nod. "Good morning. Kimberly, please go and buy breakfast for me. I am very hungry." "Yes, Ma," Kimberly replied softly. She collected money from her boss and stepped out of the shop at once. On her way back from buying breakfast for her boss, something caught her eye. Across the road, she saw the disabled man she had met days ago. He was slowly wheeling himself forward on his old wheelchair. At once, Kimberly ran across the road to meet him. As she got closer to the elderly man, then he saw her. A small smile formed on his tired face. Kimberly walked closer. "Good morning, Papa," she said gently. "I am happy to see you again." "Good morning, my daughter," he replied, his voice soft. Kimberly smiled and said, "I did not ask your name the last time we met. What should I call you, Papa?" The elderly man sat up a little. "My name is Ezekiel," he said. "And you, my daughter? What is your name?" "My name is Kimberly," she replied. Ezekiel nodded slowly. "Kimberly, that is a beautiful name." Kimberly smiled again. "Thank you, Papa Ezekiel." Kimberly stood beside him. "I did not see you last night," she said. "I came to where I saw you the last time. I waited for you. I was worried. Where did you go?" Ezekiel lowered his eyes. "My daughter. I went to look for food somewhere else." His words touched Kimberly deeply. She asked softly, "Have you eaten today?" Ezekiel shook his head. "No, I haven't." Kimberly felt something strong in her chest. She knew what hunger felt like. She knew how the body became weak, how the mind became tired. She looked at the food in her hand. But she did not think twice. "Papa," she said, placing the food gently in his hand, "this food was sent by my boss. She asked me to buy it for her. But do not worry, I still have some money with me. I will buy another one for her." She paused and looked at him kindly. "From today you will not need to move around looking for food anymore. I received my first salary yesterday. I will buy enough food items, cook, and bring food to you every morning at the same place where we met last time." Ezekiel's eyes opened wide. They were full of shock and tears. His lips shook as he tried to speak. "My daughter, you do not know me. Why are you doing this for me?" he asked softly. Kimberly smiled. "Because I know how it feels," she whispered. "And because you deserve to eat." Ezekiel covered his face with his palm. "God bless you," he said in a trembling voice. "I have not seen this kind of kindness in many years." Kimberly smiled as she turned to leave. Ezekiel looked at her with pure amazement as she walked away. His eyes followed her just the same way they did the first day. He kept whispering to himself, "Who is this girl? Why is she so kind?" And for the first time in a long time, Ezekiel felt hope. Kimberly bought a replacement and walked quickly toward the shop with the new food pack in her hand. She prayed in her heart that her boss would not be angry. She had only stepped out for a short moment, but Mrs. Benson was the kind of woman who noticed everything. As Kimberly approached the entrance, she stopped. Mrs. Benson was standing at the door with her arms folded tightly across her chest. Her face looked stiff. Her eyes were sharp, like she had been waiting. "Kimberly," she said, her voice cold. "What took you so long?" Kimberly bowed her head. "I am very sorry, Ma," she said softly. Mrs. Benson stepped closer and looked straight into her eyes. Her face was hard with anger. "Sorry?" she snapped. "Do you know how long you stayed out there? I sent you on a simple errand, and you wasted so much time." Kimberly kept her head down. "I am sorry, Ma," she repeated quietly. Mrs. Benson was a very strict woman. She noticed every small mistake. She did not like excuses, and she did not smile easily. Many workers feared her because she often punished people without mercy. She stared at Kimberly for a long moment as if holding back her anger. Then she reached out, grabbed the food pack from Kimberly's hand angrily and said, "Take this as your last warning. If this ever happens again, you will not like what I will do. Do you hear me?" "Yes, Ma," Kimberly replied softly. Mrs. Benson turned away sharply and walked back into the shop, leaving Kimberly standing there in silence for a moment before she slowly followed her inside. As the day went on, she arranged goods, greeted customers, counted items, and attended to them. She did everything quietly, hoping not to make any mistake. Days went by, and every single day, Kimberly kept her promise. Every morning on her way to work, she cooked food at home and brought it to Ezekiel. She never missed a single day. Each time she came, Ezekiel's face lit up with a gentle smile. She had become the only person who cared enough to check on him. But one morning when Kimberly reached him, something felt different. Ezekiel looked weak. His hands were shaking. His eyes looked dull. His breathing was slow. Kimberly's heart tightened immediately. She placed the food she was carrying in his hand and asked softly, "Papa Ezekiel, what is wrong? You look sick?" Ezekiel tried to smile, but his voice was low. "My daughter, I have been feeling feverish since last night. My body is hot. I tried to endure it." Kimberly did not even wait. She stood up in fear. "Papa, let me get medicine now. Please wait for me." She ran straight to the nearest pharmacy and explained what Ezekiel told her. The fever, the weakness, the shaking. The pharmacist nodded, picked out some medicines, and told her exactly how to give them. Kimberly paid and rushed back. She knelt beside Ezekiel. "Papa, please eat a little so I can give you the medicine." He took small bites. Then she gave him the medicine the pharmacist prescribed. After a while, the shaking reduced. Kimberly wiped the sweat from his forehead with her handkerchief. Ezekiel looked at her with tired eyes. "My daughter? Thank you. But why are you helping me? You barely even know me." Kimberly held his hand softly. "Papa, I know what hunger feels like. I know what suffering feels like. If I can help you even a little, I will." Ezekiel lowered his head. Tears gathered in the corners of his eyes. "God bless you," he whispered. "May good things find you." After Kimberly left, Ezekiel sat quietly, thinking. He leaned his head back and whispered to himself, "She is so kind. Too kind. No one had cared for him like this in many years. No one had fed him. No one had held his hand. No one had stayed beside him for hours, just to make sure he was fine. She is a gift, a rare gift," he said to himself. The next morning, just as she promised, Kimberly returned. The sun was not fully bright yet, but she hurried straight to his usual spot with food in her hand. "Papa Ezekiel," she called softly. He opened his eyes and smiled weakly. "My daughter, you came." She stood beside him and gave him the warm food. After that, she gave him the drugs the pharmacist had prescribed. "Eat, Papa," she said gently. "You must get strong." When Kimberly looked at her watch, her eyes widened. She stood up quickly. "Papa, I must run. I will come back this evening." She picked her bag and rushed out. When Kimberly got to work, her heart dropped. Mrs. Benson was waiting at the entrance with her arms folded, her face tight and cold. Kimberly froze. She knew immediately she was in trouble. "Kimberly," Mrs. Benson said, "do you know what time it is?" Kimberly bowed her head. "I am sorry, Ma. I lost track of—" Mrs. Benson cut her off. "Your salary will be deducted this month. This is your punishment." Kimberly's eyes filled with tears at once. She fell to her knees. "Please, Ma, I beg you. Life is already hard. I cannot lose any money. Please have mercy." But Mrs. Benson looked at her without pity. "Stand up and go inside," she said sharply. "Start work now. Do not waste time kneeling on the floor." She turned and walked away. Kimberly stayed on her knees for a moment, shaking softly before wiping her tears and walking inside. Her chest felt heavy. Her heart felt tired. Life was already difficult and now it had become even harder. When closing time came, she closed the shop and went to the food shop to get food. Then she walked straight to Ezekiel. She just needed someone to talk to. "Papa Ezekiel!" she called as she reached him. He looked up and smiled gently. "My daughter, welcome." She placed food beside him. But as she did, he kept studying her face. He could tell something was troubling her. "My daughter," he said softly. "What is wrong? Your eyes look sad today." Kimberly took a deep breath, but it was weak. "Papa, it's my boss. She removed money from my salary because I came late this morning." Ezekiel's face dropped. He let out a slow breath. "Oh, my daughter, I am sorry. You do not deserve this kind of pain." He held her hand gently. "All will be well soon," he said. "You will not suffer like this forever. God is watching you." Kimberly nodded, but her heart still felt heavy. Ezekiel looked at her again, this time with curiosity. "My daughter," he said softly, "tell me about your life. What if your parents? How did you grow up?" Kimberly paused for a moment. She looked down, but when she looked at his face again, she felt safe. She trusted him. So she told him her story. "Papa, I was abandoned as a baby. They found me at the gate of an orphanage on a rainy night. I grew up there. I never knew my parents. After school, I tried to get a job, but nothing worked. I am still trying. This job is all I can find." Ezekiel listened quietly, his eyes full of emotion. When she finished, he placed his hand on hers again. "My daughter, all will be well soon," he said gently. "You will not remain where you are. God will open a way for you." Kimberly nodded slowly as a small tear rolled down her cheek. She did not know how or when, but his words brought comfort to her heart. As the days went by, Kimberly's visits to the roadside became more frequent. Each visit made them closer. Kimberly soon began to see Ezekiel not just as an elderly man, but as the father she never had. She talked to him freely every evening. She laughed with him. She told him small stories from her day. And he listened with a warm smile that made her heart feel light, even on her hard days. Ezekiel, on the other hand, admired her. Even with her struggles, she found a way to bring joy to someone else. Even in her pain, she made someone smile. But every night, after she left, he became troubled. He would lie on his old carton, staring at the dark ceiling, and whisper to himself, "I must tell her the truth." But when? There was something he had kept hidden from her. Something big. Something that could change everything. He wanted to tell her, but he feared the shock it would bring. So he told himself, "When the time is right, I will tell her everything." While their closeness grew, Kimberly's punctuality at work grew worse. She woke up earlier, but she still always stopped to check on Ezekiel. She made sure he ate. By the time she finished all this and ran to work, she was always late. Mrs. Benson noticed. Every day, her eyes followed Kimberly with suspicion. She saw how Kimberly came in distracted and quiet. It made her angry. One morning, something happened that changed everything. Kimberly arrived at the shop, breathing fast. Sweat covered her forehead. She knew she was late again. Very late. As she entered, she saw Mrs. Benson standing at the center of the shop with her arms folded tightly. "Kimberly," she said, her voice sharp, "come here." Kimberly stepped forward slowly. "Ma, I'm sorry, Mrs. Benson raised her hand. "Enough. You are late again. You have been coming in late almost every day now. It seems you are no longer serious with this job. You are distracted, and I cannot allow this." Kimberly shook her head fast. "Ma, please. It will not happen again. Please give me one more chance." Mrs. Benson looked at her without pity. "No, I have tried. I cannot continue like this. Kimberly, you are fired." Those words hit Kimberly like a stone. She dropped to her knees immediately. Tears poured from her eyes. "Please, Ma," she cried. "Please, I beg you. I have no one. I have nothing. I will do better. Please do not do this to me." But Mrs. Benson turned away. "I cannot keep a worker who does not respect time," she said coldly. "Stand up and leave." Kimberly's heart broke into pieces. Slowly, she stood up. Her legs were shaking. Her eyes were filled with tears she could not stop. She picked her bag, looked around the shop one last time, and walked out in deep sadness. Everything she had left, the little income she depended on, was gone. Early the next morning, Kimberly was still at home when a knock came on her door. She sat up quickly. Her eyes were still heavy from the night before. She opened the door carefully and saw a young man standing outside. "Good morning, Ma," he said. "I have a delivery for Kimberly." Kimberly frowned. "That's me." The man handed her a sealed envelope. "Please sign here." Kimberly signed with a shaking hand and looked up. "Who sent it?" she asked. The man shook his head. "I don't know, Ma. They didn't tell me. I was only asked to deliver it." Before she could ask more questions, he turned and walked away. Kimberly stood at her doorway, staring at the envelope. Her heart beat fast. She slowly opened it. Inside the envelope was some money. Inside the paper was a neatly written address and a short message. Please come and meet me here. You are safe. No harm. I just want to show you something. Kimberly's fingers trembled as she read it again. Who sent this? She whispered. And why? She sat on her mat and thought long and hard. She was scared, confused, and unsure. But there was money inside the envelope, as if the person wanted to make sure she could come. Finally, she stood up. I will go, she said softly. If this person wants to see me, I will go. She walked to the roadside and boarded a bus to the address in the letter. The journey was long, and her mind kept asking questions. Who sent this letter? Why do they want to see me? What do they want to show me? When she got down from the bus, she froze. The environment looked expensive. Clean roads, tall streetlights, beautiful flowers, and large buildings. Everything looked rich. Kimberly looked around in surprise. Why would someone bring me here? She thought. What is in this place? She checked the address again to be sure she was in the right place. After walking for a few minutes, she stopped in front of a tall, luxurious house. The compound was wide. The building shone like something out of a dream. She walked to the gate slowly. The security man stepped forward immediately. Madam, who are you looking for? He asked firmly. Kimberly brought out the paper with shaking hands. I got a message to come here, she said. This is the address I was given. The security man collected the paper, read it, then spoke into his walkie-talkie. He waited for a few seconds, nodded, then faced Kimberly again. You may enter, madam, he said with sudden respect. Welcome. She walked inside carefully, still confused. A maid was already waiting at the entrance of the main house. She smiled warmly. Good morning, Ma. Please follow me, she said. Kimberly followed the maid through a long hallway. Everything she saw made her eyes widen. The shining floor, the gold-colored frames, the bright lights, and the sweet smell of the house. It was far from anything she had ever known. The maid led her into a large living room. It was beautiful, neat, quiet. Please sit. The person will come soon, the maid said, then left. Kimberly sat down slowly. Her heart beat fast. Who is this person? Why am I here? What are they about to tell me? A few minutes later, she heard a faint metal sound, like wheels rolling gently on the floor. She looked up slowly, had turned her head toward the sound of the door, and then she froze where she stood. The soft sound stopped. Kimberly held her breath. The door opened slowly. A man walked in. He looked to be in his early 60s. He was tall and well-built, dressed in a neat, shining suit that fit him perfectly. His hair was neatly trimmed, showing touches of gray. His face looked calm, strong, and full of quiet authority. So Kimberly's heart skipped. The man took a few steps forward. Behind him walked two people. A maid followed quietly. Beside the man was an elderly woman, elegant and well-dressed. She held her head high, her eyes warm and kind. She walked closely beside him, like someone who belonged there. And Kimberly stood up slowly. Her eyes stayed on the man's face. Then he spoke. Kimberly. Her chest tightened. She knew that voice. No, she whispered. He smiled gently. It's me. Her knees felt weak. Papa Ezekiel? She asked, her voice shaking. Yes, he said softly. It's me, Ezekiel. I am actually a billionaire, Kimberly. I was pretending. Her eyes widened. Her lips trembled. She tried to speak, but no words came out. She just stared at him, confused and shocked beyond measure. Ezekiel smiled gently. I know this is strange, my daughter. Let me explain. He pointed to the elderly woman beside him. This is my wife, Agnes. Agnes nodded kindly. Welcome, my dear. Kimberly swallowed hard, still unable to move. Ezekiel took a slow breath and began his story. Agnes and I lived a very good life, he said. We built everything together. We worked hard. We gave to the poor. We helped many people. And little by little, our small work became a big company, then an empire. Agnes placed her hand over her chest. But even with all the money, all the success, our home was empty. We had no child. Ezekiel continued. We went to the doctor many times. That was when we learned Agnes had a rare medical condition. The doctor said she could not carry a child. Kimberly's heart softened as she looked at them. Ezekiel smiled sadly. But I love my wife. I refuse to take another woman. I refuse to break her heart. So we live like that. Just the two of us. Agnes wiped a small tear from her eye. But as we grew older, Ezekiel went on, we began to worry. Who would take care of everything we built? Who would continue the work of kindness? Who would protect what we spent our whole lives creating? Agnes nodded. We checked many people, but no one had the heart we wanted. So, Ezekiel said, leaning forward again, I decided to disguise myself, to look for someone kind, someone with a good heart, someone who helps even when they have nothing. His eyes softened as he looked at Kimberly. That person was you. Kimberly's breath caught. Tears filled her eyes. You gave your last food to a stranger, Ezekiel said gently. You fed me for weeks. You cared for me when I was sick. You shared your struggles with me. You treated me like a father even when you had nothing. I had to find out where you lived so I could send that letter to you this morning. Ezekiel looked at Kimberly quietly. I know you are confused, he said gently. I could see it in your eyes from the moment I walked in. Kimberly nodded slowly, tears resting in her eyes. For many weeks I made people believe I was a cripple, Ezekiel said. I wanted to know how people would treat me, he said, when they thought I had nothing to offer. He stopped in front of her. Then he asked the question that shook her heart and filled the room with silence. Kimberly, will you be our daughter? Agnes walked closer, her face full of love. She touched Kimberly's shoulder gently. My dear, she said softly, I know this is a lot. We will give you time. You do not have to decide today. Kimberly could not speak. Tears flowed from her eyes. Her whole body shook with surprise. She finally whispered, Please, give me time to think. Of course, Ezekiel said. Take all the time you need. Agnes held her hand gently. But please stay with us. Let us know you. Let us grow together. Kimberly nodded slowly. I will stay. Ezekiel smiled. Agnes smiled. The house felt warm, safe, peaceful. But deep inside Kimberly's heart, she knew her life had just taken a turn she never expected. Living in the big house felt like a new world to Kimberly. At first she was shy. She walked slowly. She spoke softly. On her first morning there, a maid greeted her. Good morning, Ma, the maid said. Kimberly quickly replied, Good morning. Please, you can just call me Kimberly. The maid smiled. Agnes was standing nearby. She watched quietly. Every day, Agnes watched Kimberly closely. She noticed how Kimberly greeted everyone with respect. She saw how Kimberly thanked the guards. She saw how she spoke kindly to the maids. She even saw how Kimberly checked on Ezekiel many times a day. Sir, do you need anything? Kimberly would ask. Ezekiel would smile and say, I am fine, my daughter. Thank you. Agnes watched all this and smiled to herself. This girl's kindness is real, she thought. It comes from her heart. Slowly, Kimberly began to relax. She laughed more. She talked freely. She no longer felt shy. She also became very fond of Agnes. Agnes listened to her without judging. When Kimberly spoke about her past, Agnes held her hand and listened quietly. One afternoon, Kimberly said softly, Mama Agnes, thank you for being kind to me. Agnes smiled. My dear, kindness brought you here. Soon the three of them, Agnes, Ezekiel, and Kimberly, became very close. They ate together at the same table. They talked for long hours. Sometimes they laughed. Sometimes they shared quiet moments. For the first time in her life, Kimberly felt what a real family felt like. But inside her heart, a big question remained. Can I really belong here? She kept asking herself. Weeks passed. One morning, Kimberly asked Agnes and Ezekiel to sit with her in the living room. Her hands were shaking. Her heart beat fast. Ezekiel noticed. My daughter, are you okay? He asked. Kimberly took a deep breath. She looked at them both. I have been thinking for days now, she said softly. I got scared when you asked me to be your daughter. I did not know what to say. Agnes reached for her hand. Take your time, my dear. Kimberly nodded. I am ready now, she said. I want to be your daughter. For a moment, the room was quiet. Then Agnes broke down in tears. She stood up and hugged Kimberly tightly. Thank you, my child, she cried. Thank you. Ezekiel smiled, his eyes wet. Welcome home, my daughter, he said. Kimberly cried too, but this time her tears were not from pain. They were from joy. That same week, the adoption process began. Papers were signed. Everything was done properly. 1 week later, it became official. Kimberly was now their daughter. A new chapter had opened in her life, and nothing would ever be the same again. A few weeks later, Agnes and Ezekiel called Kimberly to sit with them one quiet evening. Ezekiel looked at her kindly and asked, My daughter, what would you love to do with your life? What is in your heart? Kimberly was surprised by the question. She thought for a moment, then spoke softly. I would love to go back to school, she said. I want to do my master's degree. Agnes smiled immediately. That is a good dream, she said. Ezekiel nodded. Then we will support you. They sponsored Kimberly to study abroad for her master's degree. It was her first time leaving the country. It was not easy, but she worked hard. She studied day and night. She remembered where she came from and why she must not fail. When Kimberly returned home after finishing her studies, Agnes and Ezekiel welcomed her warmly. One evening, Ezekiel asked gently, My daughter, would you like to take over the company someday? Kimberly froze. The company? She asked, shocked. Me? Agnes held her hand. Yes, you. We trust you. Kimberly's eyes filled with tears. She was overwhelmed. She was scared. But deep inside, she was also happy. After a long pause, she nodded. I will do my best, she said. I accept. From that day, Agnes and Ezekiel began to train her seriously. They taught her how the company worked, how to make calm decisions, how to read reports, and how to solve problems without anger. Kimberly learned fast. She asked questions. She took notes. She listened carefully. Everything she studied in school finally made sense. She was calm. She was smart. She was focused. People in the company were surprised. She understands quickly, some said. She is humble, others said. After 7 months of training, the day finally came. Ezekiel and Agnes took Kimberly to the company's boardroom. The board members were already seated. When they entered, the room became silent. Everyone stood up to greet them. Ezekiel raised his hand and said, Please sit. Today is a special day. He held Kimberly's hand and walked her to the front. This young woman, he said clearly, is our daughter. We have trained her, and we trust her. From today, she will be the next CEO. Agnes and I will step down and rest. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the room filled with smiles and applause. Kimberly held her chest and smiled through tears. One by one, the board members congratulated her. Some shook her hand. Some bowed their heads with respect. She turned and looked at Ezekiel. She remembered the man she once fed beside the road, the man she helped when he had fever, the man she thought was poor. Her eyes filled with tears again. She remembered the day she gave him her last plate of food. One act of kindness, one simple decision, one moment of compassion. That single act lifted her from being a poor salesgirl to becoming the heiress of a billionaire empire. And Kimberly knew, deep in her heart, that her life would never be the same again. 2 years passed. Life moved forward, but Kimberly never forgot where she came from. Even with her new position, her new home, and her new life, she remained the same gentle girl with a kind heart. One morning, Kimberly stood in front of a small building with fresh paint. Children laughed inside. Some ran around the compound. Some sat quietly with books in their hands. A sign at the gate read, Hope Haven Orphanage. This was Kimberly's dream. She had built orphanage homes in different communities, starting from the very area where she once grew up. She never forgot the orphanage that raised her. She never forgot the caregivers who taught her good manners. She never forgot the nights she slept hungry. She never forgot the pain of being abandoned. And she never forgot the single act of kindness that changed her life. Because of this, Kimberly began to give back. She paid school fees for many children who had no one. She bought books and uniforms. She fed the hungry. She donated food to poor families. She supported widows and the elderly. She created programs to train young people with no help. Every month, food trucks moved through poor streets. Children smiled. Hope returned to many homes. One afternoon, as Kimberly stood watching children eat happily, Agnes walked beside her. "My daughter," Agnes said softly, "you could have chosen an easy life. Why do you do all this?" Kimberly smiled gently. "Because someone once fed me when I was hungry," she replied, "and because kindness saved my life." Later that day, Ezekiel joined her. He looked at the children, then at Kimberly. "You have done well," he said. "Very well." Kimberly shook her head slowly. "No, Papa," she said. "I am only returning what was given to me." She paused. "One plate of food lifted me. One kind heart changed my story. I want other children to have the same chance." Ezekiel nodded, his eyes full of pride. That evening, as the sun went down, Kimberly stood quietly at the gate of the orphanage. She watched the children laugh. She listened to their voices, and she whispered softly to herself, "I was once like you, and I was helped." Her story had come full circle. One act of kindness did not just change her life, it changed many lives after her. And Kimberly knew one thing for sure. Kindness never ends with one person. It grows, it spreads, and it lives on forever. This story teaches us a deep and timeless lesson. Kindness does not need permission. It does not need wealth. It does not wait for the right time. Kimberly did not have much, yet she gave the little she had. She did not know who Ezekiel was. She did not give because she expected a reward. She gave because her heart was pure. And that one simple act of kindness changed her life forever. Never look down on anyone. Never ignore someone's pain. Never think your little kindness does not matter. What you do for someone today, in secret, may be the very thing that opens a great door for you tomorrow. Sometimes the person you help when you are struggling is the person God uses to lift you up. If this story touched your heart, please share your thoughts in the comment section. I would truly love to read from you. There is another very interesting story coming in a few days, so subscribe to this channel and turn on your notification bell so you will be notified immediately when it is uploaded. If you enjoyed this story, hit the like button and share it with your friends so others can also learn from this powerful lesson. Thank you so much for watching. God bless you.